This is the introduction to our 6th unit in Masechet Bava this year on Daf Chavav Amud Bet. Okay, before we look at the Gemara text itself, please open up your Gemara to Daf Chavav Amud Bet. If you don't have your Gemara on you, please pause the video and go get it. If you have your Gemara and you have not yet opened up, please pause the video and open up so you can get to the right place. Again, Daf Chavav Amud Bet. We are going to continue where we left off the last unit. So we're going to start over here where it says Hikir ba v'shacha v'amad v'nafla. Let's make that a little bit thicker so it's easier to see. Just 1 second. That's better. Let's try it again. Where's the place? Here we go. Hikir ba v'shacha v'amad v'nafla. This one's going to be a little bit shorter. It's going to go down here to after where it says Ravanan. So that's going to be our next unit. This, again, if you want to write in the margin of your Gemara, right, unit 6, that would be helpful too. And now let's get started. Before going through our new Gemara itself, it's a good idea to review some terms that we saw last time that relate to this Gemara as well, because this Gemara is really a continuation of the previous one. The first term that we're going to look at here is the term le'inyan, which literally means regarding or on the topic of. And if you remember correctly, this was used a bunch of times because we had a certain situation with the rock in the lap, and the guy gets off and rolls off, and we talked about different situations. So regarding nizakin, what's the halacha? Regarding arba advarim, what's the halacha? And we saw le'inyan nizakin, le'inyan arba advarim, le'inyan shabbat, le'inyan galut, le'inyan eved. Regarding, in relation to, in connection to, what's the halacha? The second term we have here is nizikin, damages. That's a word you need to know. It relates to everything that we do in Masechet Bava that we're learning about. It has, right, it's what do you pay for damaging something, period. Okay? Damages. Okay? You break something, you pay for the value of it. I break someone's arm, what does it cost? What is it worth that I just broke? The next thing is the arba devarim. Literally means arba is 4, devarim meaning things. The 4 things. Otherwise, but really what it's talking about are the other 4 things that you pay for if you injure someone. So besides the damage that you do, if you injure somebody seriously, you have to pay for 4 other things. And if you remember, that's boshet, which is embarrassment, ripoy, which is doctor bills, shevet, which is the time missed from work, because literally means resting, and sa'ar, and pain. So when something happens, le'inyan, regarding nizakin, damages, what's the halacha? Le'inyan arba advarim, the other 4 things, what's the halacha? Then we had le'inyan Shabbat, regarding Shabbat. So we were told about malach and machshavet. Malach and machshavet means doing malach in the normal way, meaning with intention, doing it with the normal, physically the normal way. So if you're writing with a pen in your teeth is not the normal way of doing malacha. And also when it comes to intention, usually when you act with intention, knowing that you're doing something. The case we had in our previous Gemara, the person had the rock in his lap, they had no clue that this rock was on their lap. So then when they get up and it rolls off and it does malacha on Shabbat, or if somehow you do malacha in a way where you have no clue that you could not have known in any way you were going to do malacha. Right? You never have a light bulb on inside your fridge, and someone right before Shabbos decides to put a light bulb into your fridge. You had no way that happened. So when you opened up the fridge, how were you supposed to know the light bulb was going to go on? That's not malach and machshavet. That's not doing malach in the normal way. And if you don't do malach in the normal way, you are patur. And that was in our previous case. In our previous case, he would have been patur from Shabbat, from violating Shabbat. He's patur, he's exempt, because he did not do malach and machshavet. We have galut, which is exile, if you go to exile if you kill somebody by accident. And finally, eved. The law of a servant, which is that if he gets injured, if a male or female servant is injured by their master, then the eved, the servant, gets to go free. Just one more thing before we move on. Please remember these terms. They're going to come up. Please don't just take time to fill them into your sheet and just forget about them. These terms are going to come up. Think about them, remember them, know them, because you have to know them in order to understand our Gemara. Finally, our last part of our review is we're going to go over the actual information from our previous Gemara, because the reasons and the facts and the information from our previous Gemara is actually going to be important for the Gemara that we're going to be learning next. So if you remember correctly from last time, the situation that we dealt with was a person with a rock on his lap. They have no idea that it's there, and it rolls off and it does damage. Right? Basically, remember what we pointed out, it's not about the rock, and it's not about the guy about the lap, and it's not about the rolling, and it's not about that weird situation. What it's about is What happens if someone does something and there's no way they could have known? What's the halacha? Okay, and there are 5 different areas of halacha, and it shows us that the rules are not the same for each one. So we start off with nizakin for damages. So for damages, this person is chayav. They might have had zero idea that they were damaging somebody, but if you damage someone, there's no way you could have known about it. You're still chayav. Why? Adam mu'ad la'olam. You're always responsible for what you do. That's what our previous Gemara taught us, and from the Mishnah as well. Then when it came to arba advarim, the other 4 things, right? Embarrassment, doctor bills, time off work, and pain. So if you injure someone in a way where you had no clue you could have, you are actually patur. You don't pay for those 4 things. Why? Because you only pay for arba advarim if the damage is done on purpose or because of negligence. Negligence meaning I was completely careless. This case is neither. There's nothing you could have done. You had no way of knowing. That's not purpose, that's not negligent, and therefore you are patur from the arba advarim. Also in our previous case, when it came to Shabbat, you were patur. Why? Because it's not melechet machshevet. Because melechet machshevet is only when you try to act in a way where I know what I'm doing. If I have no clue there's a rock on my lap, if I have no clue there's a light bulb in the fridge, there's no way I can know what I'm doing. That's not a normal way of doing work, and therefore you're not chayav on Shabbat in the previous case. When it came to galut, when it came to exile, you were also patur, because in that case, accident has to be a situation where you kind of knew about it and you could call it an accident. If there's nothing I could have done, the accident when it comes to galut is I could have avoided, I could have known, but I forgot what I was doing. I was careless about what I wasn't really paying attention. Here, you had no clue. If you have no clue, then you do not go to galut. Again, this is a review from what we did previously. And finally, when it came to eved, when it came to servant, if the person injures their servant in a way that they could not have known they were going to injure them, then it was a machloket. Why was it a machloket? Because we're talking about a situation where there was no intention. And when it comes to the situation where there's no intention, the rabbis and Rabbi Shimon Gamliel argue. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says the eved does not go free. The Rabbanan, the rabbis, believe that the eved does go free in a situation where there's no intention to harm the eved. No matter what, you harm the eved, they go free. So therefore, this situation, right, specifically brings up a machloket when it comes to eved. This was all from our previous Gemara. And we have to see if in our new situation that we're going to have, if the same reasons apply or the halacha might be different. Now what you should be doing now is pausing the video. You should first check out, go through this to make sure that you understand it. Because if you don't completely understand this, then you're going to have a little bit of trouble trying to figure out what's going to go on in our next Gemara, which is what I'd like you guys to be able to do, to try to figure it out on your own. If you have any questions, please ask a classmate, or you can ask me. Assuming you reviewed the previous information from the previous Gemara, so now we should be ready to move on to our next Gemara. Before we look on the text of our Gemara, we start discussing the situations that come up. There's one more pasuk, there's one more source that we need to know, and 2 more concepts we need to understand before we can understand our Gemara properly. So what we're looking at here is a pasuk from Sefer Bamidbar discussing Ir Miklat, which in our case is called, in our case we were referring to as galut meaning exile. So in our situation, this is all about galut, exile, okay, going to Ir Miklat. Now let's look at the pasuk, because the way the pasuk is phrased is very important. It says, "V'hikritem lachem arim." You'll prepare cities, arim miklat, yan lachem, right? Cities of refuge. V'nasham rotzeach, and a killer can escape there. Who? Makei nefesh bishagaga, one who kills by accident. The important phrase here, again, is the phrase bishagaga, which we're going to call in this case shogeg, from the same shorish, shogeg, which means by accident. And what I want to point out here is that there's 2 different ways you could do something by accident. In this pasuk, we use the word shogeg. We also have a phrase called ones. Now, the difference between the 2 is that ones is some situation which is completely out of your control. Like our first rock in the lab case, where there's nothing you could have done. You had no way of controlling for that situation. Yes, I might have done something by accident, but it was an accident that can't really be pinned back to me, because what was I supposed to do? As opposed to shogeg is where there's some sort of knowledge. I know what's going on, I just forgot. I was a little bit careless, right, when it comes to killing somebody by accident, right? I knew I was holding something sharp in my hand, I just, forgot that there was someone behind me. So that's shogeg, that's an accident, but it's different than a case of ones, where I'm sitting there, chopping down a tree with my axe, and then someone decides to run right in front of me as I'm swinging it, I couldn't have known that the person was going to come. That person came out of nowhere. That would be a case of ones. So shogeg and ones. And what you should realize is that going to galut requires bishagaga. It requires shogeg. It requires that there's some sort of knowledge. If it's totally an ones out of my control, as we saw in the previous case, a person does not go to galut. Now, armed with this last piece of information and the information from the previous Gemara, you should be able to figure out what our next Gemara is going to say for each of these, for the new situation. So let's take a look. If you look at our new Gemara, so let's compare it to the previous one. Our previous Gemara started off, Amar Rabba, Hayta Evimunach lo b'chei velo hikir ba, v'amar v'nafla. He did not hikir ba, he did not know about it or realize it. V'amar, he got up v'nafla. Now, look how our Gemara starts off. Hikir ba, not velo hikir ba, hikir ba v'shacha, v'amar v'nafla. He knew about it, he forgot about it, then amad v'nafla. He got up and it fell. This is our new situation. And what you'll notice is that after our new scenario, our Gemara goes through the same exact thing it did last time. So here's our new situation. You knew about it, and you forgot, and you got up and it fell. So there is a little bit more knowledge here. Le'inyan nizakin. What's the halacha when it comes to nezek? Le'inyan nadal devrim. What's the halacha when it comes to the other four things? Le'inyan galut. Right? Le'inyan shabbat. Le'inyan eved. Same scenario, new scenario, same halachic topics and areas that we're trying to figure out what's the halacha for each one of these things. So again, here are the 5 areas of halacha. Again, we have our new scenario, hikir of shacha, what you forgot about mavinafla, and our goal now is to figure out, in this new scenario, what should the halacha be in each one of these areas of halacha. What I'd like you to do now is please take a look at your notes. There's a chart there that I asked you to fill out to try to figure out, or I asked you to try to figure out and anticipate what's the Gemara going to say in this new scenario for each one of these halachot. Using the information from the previous Gemara, using the information that we saw in this video, it should give you a pretty good idea of what's going to come on, what's going to be coming in the next sugi, to anticipate what the halachot are going to be. Again, discuss it with your chavruta, discuss it with someone else in the room, discuss it with me. And after you're done filling out that chart and anticipating, we'll discuss it all as a class, and we'll have an opportunity then to go into the Gemara and learn the Gemara inside.